Good evening, everyone. Thank you for persevering. We're going out slightly later than usual, but not too late. And a reasonable time, I think, for the listener out there who may be viewing this on YouTube. Please remember that we've had 2 community strikes on YouTube. Please subscribe to us on Spreaker. Go to windowsontheworld.net on the homepage. You can join our Discord channel. And please subscribe to us on Odyssey. All of our Sunday shows now go on Odyssey as well as Spreaker. We do not put any of our Sunday shows on YouTube because we've had 2 community strikes. So we're going to have a good time tonight. And I think some insightful stuff is coming your way. Last week, we had a great show with Karen Dodd talking about how community organizations are co-opted. Little bit of a speciality because I've been talking about it for 10 years. And now it's becoming extremely apparent that the narrative of all public opinion is absolutely shepherded by interested parties, shall we say. And we've covered that a lot over the years. So do have a look through windowsontheworld.net and put in global local agenda and see what comes up, and then look into communitarianism and sustainable development, because that's a bit about what we're going to be talking really along the lines of tonight with my special guest. And I don't know whether, are you my guest or am I your guest? I suppose it doesn't matter really, does it? Because
whatever.
I think originally, Ciaran, I was going to be your guest, and then we decided to do it on this channel. Then you became my guest. But then again, when you put it on your channel, I'm going to be your guest. So it doesn't really matter. So, yeah, do you want to start off with what you got to say? Because we've had some good conversations recently.
Yeah, my channel's called, on BitChute, it's called Alternative News C. Boyle, C-A-B-C, C. Boyle. People don't understand sometimes my language, my accent. So I'm from Northern Ireland, a place called Strabane. Strabane would have one of the highest unemployment rates in the whole of Europe, Mark. And Derry, which is not far up the road, Derry would have almost similar unemployment. So we're seeing a lot of poverty in Strabane, a lot of poverty in Derry. And it's always been the way, even since the peace process, in which we had Sinn Féin taking power and coming in and telling us they're going to look after all the people. Yeah. But we're actually in a worse scenario now than we ever were, almost, because the unemployment with this scamdemic is through the roof. And I have a few things I wanted to ask you about, Mark, in relation to...
Before we do that, Ciaran, I think it'd be really a very good point, right, about the globalist agenda. In that, of course, there's the 3 main parties, I think, in Ireland. But Sinn Féin are not really a nationalist group anymore, are they? They're not really about the people of Ireland. They seem to be more of a globalist group. Would that be right?
They're a globalist going down the agenda. They're traitors to their country. And I told them many times that they're traitors. I've sent them messages and emails, no reply. They just go by the health minister, who is a Freemason. He actually is a Freemason, and we found that out from about 15 years ago. He was awarded a Freemasonry kind of scholarship or whatever. So that's who rules this country. And the DUP are involved as well. They would actually have more support than Sinn Féin and the Protestant community, but they want to divide us, and they're continuing the division. There's riots in Belfast, and that's not because of the pandemic. It's because of an orchestrated division between the communities by the Crown or by whoever else, MI5, whatever. Yeah. So that's where we are.
That's really interesting, Ciaran, because a lot of people aren't even aware of that. I think they're catching on now. What's interesting to me about it is that if you talk about this stuff in other countries apart from the UK, everyone gets it immediately. But in the UK, there's still this kind of subservience to authority, the crown, and basically globalism. So I thought that'd be a very good thing to bring up at the beginning, in that Sinn Féin people thought was a nationalist party. Of course, it isn't. It isn't a nationalist party. It's a globalist party. And I think that's an important point, isn't it? Yeah.
And Antifa, we've seen photos of Jerry Adams and Antifa flags beside him. So right away, I was suspicious, and that was a few years back. But when the pandemic came, Mark, the scamdemic, when they went along with that, I knew they were globalists. They are involved in vaccine companies. Michelle O'Neill, who is the president in Northern Ireland, she's got shares. Her and a family relative have shares in the vaccination companies. So there you go with a vaccine. They're pushing it on everybody, and children will be next. And
yes.
I watch what I say on your channel as well, because of the big V.
Well, yeah, we've already had 2 strikes, and we don't want to get... the reason I use this channel, folks, is really for these live streams where we can talk about the community stuff. In other words, communitarianism, because I don't think you can get chucked off for that. But really to advertise the Sunday shows, because I'm trying to get people to go to Spreaker and windowsontheworld.net rather than here, an Odyssey. So please... I don't want to keep going on about it, but it's quite important because we've always been shut down everywhere. And I think that's a sign that we are actually doing something useful, because most of the fake alternative media in the UK is exactly that, fake, backslapping load of media prostitutes, in my opinion. But I think it's very important that, and you've been taken off, haven't you, Ciaran? You've been knocked off YouTube a couple of times, haven't you?
Two channels, and this one's on its last legs. I don't use it anymore, Mark. It's not worth it.
No.
So, there's something here I wanted to read out to you, Mark.
Yeah, go on.
Just from my own learning information about what's going on. So we had you told me in the last interview about how they're connecting communities and councils together.
Yes.
Because they want to have a hierarchy that filters all the information through all the communities within them areas. Right. So we have this is Strabane and Derry District Council. So the 2 underprivileged areas, really bad. Mental health, suicides, everything is through the roof, and particularly in Derry. And this is what the 4 senior Derry and Strabane council staff earn. And you report, I can just read it out, Mark, and then you can come on then. And you report charting the number of council employees earning a total of over 100,000. Has listed 4 senior figures within Derry and Strabane District Council as passing the threshold. The Taxpayers Alliance report published today showed that within Derry and Strabane District Council, there are 4 people whose salary and pension package amount to over 100 grand over the year 2019-2020. According to the report, Council Chief Executive John Kelpie earned a salary of 117,500 per year, and when combined with a 23,500 pension, this brings the total to 141,000 per year. 3 directors within Derry and Strabane District Council are now on the UK-wide list published today. There are Director of Business and Culture, Stephen Gillespie, Director of Health and Community, Karen McFarland, and Director of Environment and Regeneration, Karen Phillips. Each of the 3 senior figures within Derry and Strabane Council have a salary listed of 87,500 and a pension of 17,500, giving a total of 105,000 average. You still there, Mark?
Yeah, I just thought I'd give you the floor with that one because it's quite important. Now, This is really what it's all about. And what I find interesting about what you've just said is they seem to rub this in the faces of the public. And they do it in every single borough. But a couple of years ago, I was sent all the information about Northern Ireland communities and what it was. We did a whole show on this. And really, a lot of this stuff gets repetitive because it's all about centralization of power. So in the UK as a whole, you have these borough councils joining up with other borough councils. And I was talking about this for the last 3 years because it was all predicted a long time ago. And what it's to do is to take away all local input. So now that they're all on Zoom meetings, they're now saying we're not going to go back to having real meetings. Now, they didn't have real meetings before anyway, because whenever they had a consultation, it was done with Delphi technique, which means steering the public into the predetermined outcome that they already knew about. For instance, in the borough I used to live in, Waltham Forest in northeast London, a councillor there just died called Chris Robbins. And of course, Stella Creasy, the virtue signalling narcissist waste of space, was all over it like a rash because someone's died and she could get a picture in the paper. Now, the point is that Chris Robbins, this councillor from Waltham Forest, I think became the deputy leader of the council or whatever his title was, look him up. But he told me after a council meeting, well, actually he told the people who were there, which was basically me and half a dozen others, right, that the borough would irrevocably change within 15 years and nobody knew what the hell he was talking about. So how the hell did he know of what was going to happen? Because he did know what was going to happen.
Mark,
Go on. Have you dropped out there? Oh, so let's have a look at what people are saying in chat. I don't know whether Ciaran can hear us. Are you still there, Ciaran?
Yeah, I'm back. Somebody tried to ring and fucked up.
Oh, that's all right. I thought you couldn't hear me. Okay,
yeah,
so
yeah,
it says,
go ahead.
Even the UK column mentioned communitarianism today. Well, it's only been around for about, it's been going in the UK officially since 2010, but obviously communitarian has been around for a long time. It was invented in 1948 by John Goodwin Barnby, and it was originally categorized as ideas of a communist nature. In the turn of the century, early 1900s, it was recategorized as relating to a community. So what's a community? A community is a group of artificially created people, which this is what a community is now. It's a group that's artificially created, which means that it fits the parameters of the new system and you're meant to be in it. And if you're not in it, then you're full of hate. That's a community. And that's communitarianism. It demonizes everybody outside it. And it's a very insidious thing. I've been covering it for such a long time that I think you'll find it in many of our previous shows. But I think we're now going to be talking about some of the issues that Ciaran wanted to bring up. So back to you. I was just filling in there, by the way. Yes.
Well, Mark, when you say if you don't follow the party line, that you're out of sync, that you're demonized and whatever. So we've been attacked on many fronts. We've actually been, a few of our guys were arrested. I don't know if your listeners know this, Mark, but we done some kind of protests about mask wearing and schools.
Now,
and
this was this a while ago? Was this several months ago when we talked? Yeah. I'll give you the floor on this one so you can tell the listener. Yeah.
Yeah, so this was several months ago. This was before Christmas, and the guys went up to the school. They asked politely to get in and talk with the head teachers and whoever was in charge of the health of the young people. So when they entered, they were invited in. They went over, they talked with the head teacher, they talked with the principal. They warned them about liability notices being imposed on them due to the fact that children were unscientifically being given masks to wear at school, told to sanitize their hands with toxins and the social distance, isolation as a form of abuse, all this stuff that we forwarded to them. They didn't take it well. They asked a few guys to leave. The people left as they were told. There was a bit of an argument in the car park with a head teacher, which ended up we walked away, and that was the end of that. So what followed that was the police at everybody's door. They entered one of the people's homes. They walked right in, went right up the stairs looking for one of our guys, and they couldn't find him. It was in Dublin at a protest. So it was asked to come to the police station and hand himself in for what we didn't know. So one of the guys handed himself in and spoke with the police. He asked the police to recite their oath. So the police beat him up. They almost dislocated his shoulder, left him in hospital. The other guy, he went down and he was treated a bit better. But the charges that were put on him were threats to kill, entering a premises, trespassing in a public building, right enough, and threats to kill, and other misdemeanors, other small, ridiculous things that they were blamed for. Now, all these accusations came from the school. So all the teachers that were involved lied right to the police, got the police to arrest people and charge them with threats to kill. But the problem is that we videoed it all. We videoed it all. So we were respectful. We were invited in. We read off a script, and we were very respectful, very nice to the people. They didn't want to know. We left when we were asked, all that. So now what's come of this is every single charge was dropped. The head policeman involved in the case, he has been removed from the police station in Derry, and there's a new guy coming. So all our guys are going to be suing the police. They're on the ombudsman, the police ombudsman in Northern Ireland, who oversees the activities of the police on the ground. So they've shot themselves on the foot without any evidence, only the word of the school, which was the agenda. So you are not allowed to question anything that these parasites are putting on us and our children, or you may get arrested, folks. But they've lost this one because we have all the evidence, we have it all videoed, and they didn't know it. But there you go. That's where we are now. So, Mark, these guys are getting all the charges dropped. We're moving on. We're going to sue them, and we're going to move on in different kind of ways. We've got different ideas on how to expose some of this bullshit that's been imposed on us. But we need to be very careful because we've learned a lesson. We've learned a lesson that they will do whatever it takes to destroy you and your family. They arrest you, they'll put you in jail, charges of murder, attempted murder, whatever they can get. So everything needs to be recorded, and it needs to be very careful. We need to be careful on what we say and what we do and what actions we take.
That's something I've been bringing up for a long time, because that's the nature of communitarian policing. If you are deemed to be outside the accepted narrative of public opinion as imposed by what is going on and the new system, then you will be demonized. And what's shocking about it is just really what you said. You will be accused of crimes, and then you will have to prove that you're innocent. It was very lucky that you were able to film it. And this is why people have to be especially vigilant, because I've seen this in action. And this is what the communitarian new system is all about. It's all happy, clappy and fluffy and sustainable development. Well, sustainable development is a depopulation agenda to get the world population down to 1 billion people. So anyway, the point being that when you are accused of crimes in the communitarian system, you then have to prove your own innocence. And that is why you have to be especially vigilant. So I think that was a very good example of what we've been talking about there. And I think you handled it very well, which is why I keep in touch with you, Ciaran, because you have an understanding of this that a lot of people don't. And a lot of the people who are fiddling around and talking about common law, or they're spouting words, word salads without understanding what they're doing. And if you don't understand what you're doing, then don't do it, because it's not going to work. And I keep saying this over and over again. And I find this all the time. But it ties in with exactly my experiences. So well done for that. And I think there's quite a few people who are very impressed with that, what you were saying, because it clarifies a lot of what we're talking about. Yeah, carry on, Ciaran.
Mark, someone mentioned under the video that Donegal is worse. Well, I'm actually right on the border. I'm actually in Donegal, and Ireland has had the worst and most extreme lockdown in the world, and the longest, level 5 all the time. Now, what we have figured out, and most people that watch this should know, is that what they're doing is they're giving us a 5-kilometer radius. You can only travel 5 kilometers, no more. But that is against the law. So under the Irish Constitution, Mark, under the Irish Constitution, we have the right, the inalienable rights to travel unhindered in our own country, and it cannot be superseded. Every time we get stopped by the guards, the police are called the guards over here, we bring that up and we continue, we keep at them, and we get going on. A lot of people are getting turned away because they won't stand up for their rights. We know we have the right, and they can't stop us.
No, that's a really good point, because if you are persistent with these people, they do give in. But I kind of understand it from the other point of view as well, because people get beaten down with this. And that's the whole idea. That's how totalitarianism works. People get beaten down, and that's what's happening in the whole of the UK, because people are being told all this erroneous information. I'll give you an example. So from May the 8th, they were told that you couldn't leave the country. And if you did, if you tried to get out for a non-legal reason, you'd be fined £5,000. Nothing's changed since they brought that Coronavirus Act in 2020. All this you need is to get your papers in line, because we are living under a dictatorship now. So if you're living under a dictatorship, well, or potentially a dictatorship, will get your papers in line. So basically, if you're going to leave and go to another country, don't tell them you're going on holiday. All that you have to do is say you're going for work or education purposes, or you know what you have to do? You have to look at some estate agents in the country you want to go to, make an appointment to view a few properties, and then leave the country. Nothing they can do. And people have been cowed into absolute subservience over this idea that you can't go anywhere. Well, of course you can. It's absurd. The whole thing's absurd. And it's all gaslighting and lying. And it's interesting, because I'm outside the UK at the moment. And what I find is that, how come everyone outside the UK, or the people that I've met, know that it's a load of garbage propaganda and gaslighting and abuse, and people in the UK actually believe it and say, no, you can't go anywhere, there's a pandemic on, when clearly there isn't, and you can.
Mark, you know what's very relevant to what you're saying? What you were saying about traveling, and we can travel, we can go there.
Yeah.
People are aware. They're very aware at the Strabane, the Lufford border in Donegal, that if the police are there or the guards are there, and you drive up, you might get stopped. You might get turned away. You might get turned back. But you can go in our way. You can drive in our way, and they're not there. But nobody goes that way. They go the fucking way where the police are.
Yes. Well, exactly. I mean, it's kind of incredible, because ever since this nonsense started, I would go wherever I wanted to, like you're saying. And then you think, well, okay, if I get pulled up by one of these busybodies, then I have an excuse. And I say, no, I'm traveling. Here's the person you want to talk to. I'm going there for this reason. Well, why don't you just think of that before? It only takes 5 minutes, and then you got someone to phone up, and then the great thing is, the person who you give the phone to say, look, he's late already. He's got to be here. It's a very important meeting. What are you holding him up for? Bang, off you go. Why do people? I don't know. It's like gullibility or something. I don't quite understand it, because to me, what they're doing is such an affront that I find it essential to be able to get round it. Which is what, of course, people were trying to do in communist countries. Because, by the way, everyone in the UK, as we know, it was only communist countries that said you were not allowed to leave apart from work or education. So if you are looking to your government for a reason to leave, then you're living in a communist country, or even worse, a communitarian country, because at least people who lived in communist countries knew that they lived under a dictatorship. The problem is that the people in the UK is they think they live in a democracy, and that's where it's all going wrong for them. You know.
Well, that's all the things you're saying, Mark, all them examples of stupidity, in my opinion. That makes sense, because if they're falling for this dictatorship, this communist, fascist fucking bullshit that's being imposed on us, and they can't see that, surely they're not going to see anything else. They're sleeping. I don't know what's wrong with them. But I want to tell you, before the end, Mark, I want to show your listeners Tyson Fury's dad talking about this dictatorship, and they done it on a mainstream channel in the USA or something. But it'll be interesting to show everybody. This is someone that takes no shit, sees it for what it is, and just says it. And that's what we all need to do, everybody. Tell people we're not taking this nonsense anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not wearing your mask. I'm not wearing your distancing your bullshit. None of it. And then it all goes away. The consciousness, a rising consciousness, Mark.
Well, I think it's also about what you are within yourself, because you have to look at this, I think, in a much bigger picture, because I think we've said this before, or maybe I've said it to other people, that there's a fork in the road now, and it's very clear, because those who go along with this are going along with a genocide. Those who don't go along with this are resisting the genocide. In my view, the people who resist the genocide have a much better chance of survival, because those who are willingly putting themselves down to be genocided are basically doing it by consent. And that is the important thing. This is all about consent. And consent can be manufactured. It can be coercion. There's a whole thing we did about consent. We did an article called What is Common Law? Then there's another thing called Community of Archons. Go and have a look on winnersontheworld.net, because there's a whole few articles which revolve around consent. And what is consent? It means that you give permission. So if you give your consent, then you give permission for anybody to have power over you. And it's very, very simple. And there's a very important point about that, in that it comes down to ultimately your choice. So people have to make up their own minds, and they may be coerced. You may have to go along with things you don't want to or appear to, but that doesn't mean you do. And that also means you can be plotting behind the scenes. So to me, this is a game of strategy, and it's also a psychological warfare program, and that's about it. I don't think there's much to it apart from that.
Yeah. I don't follow any rules, Mark, and I haven't had much problems getting in certain shops, and I have been questioned, but I just ignore them, and I do what I'm doing, and they don't stop me. I think people go on by any fear, you show any fear at all of hesitation, maybe, and you walk in the shop, they're going to challenge you. But I go on willy-nilly, I don't give a shit, and I'll certainly, I'm up for an argument with anybody. If they want to argue with me about a silly, nonsensical mask, I'll stand and argue all day out loud. But I think they don't want that, Mark. They can see I will. Everybody in this town knows me, and they know my thoughts and this bullshit, and they know not to question me, because they'll get it. And that's the way it is. And everybody needs that.
No, certainly. And it's very, very obvious to me now, the whole thing. It's almost, I've got a bit bored with it in a way, but what's not boring is that we're in the middle of a genocide. so that makes it kind of, it brings you back and go, okay, we are in the middle of a genocide. So in that case, you have to respond accordingly. And this is where I think that the big problem with the propaganda comes in. That's why I have the most frustration with, in that the level of the propaganda is very low. It's very subversive, but it's very transparent. And that's what's been wearing me down. Not so much the actual global action plan, but the public's reaction to it.
Yeah. I would
To
say
me, that is the worst thing.
The quality of the propaganda is crap because
Yes.
it's so easy. It's so easy to understand. It's not like they caught me there. No. It's like it's so easy. It's so clear. Matt Hancock and all them idiots are clearly bad actors. They're bad actors. They can't cry. They can't fucking do anything. So I see right through them. But there's a thing that there's a blockage in people's minds that they cannot see anywhere past the BBC and all the criminals and paedophiles within it.
Well, I think that the level of the propaganda, as I said, it's quite low. It's not sophisticated propaganda. So if you understood how propaganda works and you read a book about propaganda, then you would understand it perfectly, because there's nothing very clever, as you're saying, about it. But is there anything else you wanted to bring up?
Just, Mark, I think here in Northern Ireland, they've noticed, certainly noticed a lot of people are waking up in terms of there's something not right. They aren't going deep enough, but they see something wrong. People are taking masks off and my work and stuff. But these things that are happening in Belfast are another plot to make it look like there's a division between the Catholic and Protestant community.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
Because isn't, Mark.
Yeah. No,
there's
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah, because this is just classic to me. I kind of saw through it straight away, but there's something in the paper today about a bus that was set on fire. Do you want to tell us about that, if you know anything?
I know nothing about that. I don't read papers. Yeah. I don't watch mainstream, so I would have missed that, Mark. But it's all, these are all orchestrated because there was a false flag in Derry. I'm almost sure it was a false flag. Now, will you hear this, Mark? Does this sound right? Ask your listeners, does this sound right? So we had a journalist shot dead. And the journalist, the actual day of the shooting, there was a guy taking a camera crew from, I think it was the BBC, around the, I can't remember the area in in Derry, Londonderry. They were bringing a crew around and talking to dissident Republicans, people that they moved on from IRA and they continued the struggle or whatever. So they were walking around the very area where she was shot. So she was shot later that night in that area. The police knew that there were dissidents being interviewed in that area. Therefore, the place would have been surrounded. They would have known. They would have been watching them. But what happens? A journalist gets shot dead and nobody gets caught, Mark. There was a guy arrested and he's on trial, but I don't think it's going places at all. But for an actual event that got to happen and no one to get caught on the night or within weeks and weeks afterwards doesn't sound right to me, Mark.
No. I mean, that was clearly, they asked on a make a divide and rule situation there, because the last thing they want is that people will actually start thinking for themselves and talking to each other. They definitely don't want that. So I can see that happening. Now, I think what's interesting about what you're doing is that I think that it's perceived as a direct threat because you know what you're doing and you're going to be persistent. And that is what is a threat, because most of these protest groups, well, all of them, and even most of the alternative media is co-opted into things of little or no importance. So it's all gatekeeping. And if you start getting organized and you know what you're doing and you have a plan, then that's a direct threat. So that's why I find it interesting, because most of this stuff, I've got bored of talking about it. I did a very good interview last week with Karen Dodd, who set up this Freedom Hub network around the UK, and we were talking about the infiltration and how easy it is to take over things. It's almost like taking sweets from children, and I think that's a very important point. And I think we've talked about this before, that in Northern Ireland you do know a bit about infiltration, which I think is why that you would be perceived there as a bit of a threat, especially as far as the Crown goes, because obviously they have imposed that kind of strategy there for a long time. And I think the strategies that are used, even though they're audacious, are very simple. And this is what I have a problem with in especially the ridiculous alternative media in the UK. It always focuses on things of no importance, but never goes into the depth of what's going on. And that is where I've always liked international journalists and people who sent me stuff from other countries, because they have a natural ability to understand the destructive nature of propaganda. And that is a real problem that I have with a lot of people who ponce about talking rubbish about what's going on, basically. Because when it comes down to it, it's all about systems of management. And once you understand the psychology of the systems of management that they're using, especially with communitarianism, with the propaganda that's been enforced, it's just clearly, obviously, a very simplistic but very malevolent operation, which is where it goes into this idea that it is evil, because it's good to be able to separate the two things. Yes, these people are cooperating and they are complicit with evil. However, when you look at it as a way of managing population, it becomes a lot simpler. And then you start seeing it for what it is. Therefore, sustainable development, what you're talking about, local governments becoming more and more centralized, is basically about control, management, and depopulation. These things have been in their documents for a long time. I mentioned that last week. The Global Biodiversity Assessment of 1995 clearly stated that the world, in their opinion, the globalists, the corporations that are actually running things now, believe that the earth can only really function with 1 billion people. So why is it that the public have this problem with this idea that there won't be a genocide in the West? It's just absolutely ridiculous, because the West has been targeted to be genocided and taken down. Even Extinction Rebellion say that in their own aims, which are freely available on the internet, and we've printed many times. The inevitable collapse of Western democracy. So the new system's already in place, and it was talked about 40 years ago, and it's been planned for 100 years. So we had this group, and first of all, of course, they were nationalists. Then they were internationalists. Now they're globalists. They're an elite who hang about in not one country. And the whole of this is looking not for them, but there is for everybody else. So they want to lock down the world and have their meetings in Davos. And I don't think that the artificial intelligence world that they're creating is going to work, because it doesn't work for a lot of people. It works for people like them, but it doesn't work for a lot of other people. So I think that's an interesting point. You know.
Whoever survives, Mark, whoever survives will be coerced and bullied anyway after the genocide. But Mark, we have a doctor on our side who's actively practicing. Good. I talked with her 2 days ago, and she's an activist, and she's flat out, she's out all the time. So we've been offering Sinn Féin and that a debate between myself, 2 others, and a doctor. But they cannot handle the doctor thing. They don't want the doctor involved. They're telling her she's got dementia. Oh, she's got dementia. They're trying every trick in the book to destroy this woman, but she won't lie down, and she won't give in. And we also have a lot of Protestant communities coming over our way, Mark, as well. And a lot of the talk is we want to build our own communities outside of the system. And I want to be using certain words that you reminded me of, Mark, like minority group, that we're being discriminated against. We're different, you know. So what do you think of that?
Brilliant, because in this virtue signaling, narcissistic, shallow waste of space kind of idea they've created around the world community, then of course you become the minority because you have to usurp their narrative. How do you usurp their narrative? Well, you usurp their narrative by becoming what they describe as a protected minority. And it doesn't mean anything. What they're talking about doesn't mean anything. It has no meaning. And they only have a few words: sustainable, vibrant, diverse, and resilient. And if you start dropping those words in, you start sounding like them. Then you can take over their narrative, because these people aren't bright. They're stupid. They have to be stupid because they built a template for them called communitarianism, which all came out of the big society in 2010. I know I mention it a lot, but nobody else seems to these days. Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. Read it. It's a free download at windowsontheworld.net. I'm not advocating him because he was a subversive. What I'm saying is that these are the tactics used, and you've just described them there. In other words, you demonize everybody who is relevant. So you've got a doctor who wants to speak up, demonize it, say she's mad, say she's a racist, say she's got dementia, say she's right-wing, say she's anything. There's only 5 things they can say she is. So they'll use all of them. But once you start fighting back against this stuff with their basic propaganda and holding them strictly to account, because remember, they can be held strictly to account. What they're doing to you, you can do back to them 10 times more. And this is the point of this system that they've brought in. It leaves things open for you to take over the narrative. Are you there? Oh, I think we've got a bit of a gap again there.
Mark, do you know what? To see all that stuff that you're thinking, that would be great on paper, that we could actually educate ourselves with all these terms and words and symbol, and then we can go at them with all that shit. I'll spread it around the whole country. I'll give it to every group I know. We're going to speak at a group next week, and there's 50 brand new wake-up people that woke up attending this, and that's brilliant. So we can hand out these ideas, these community ideas, using their own words, usurping their own bullshit against them, and we can't lose. And do you know what I was going to go on there a wee bit, Mark? A wee bit. I'm excited about talking about a simulation. If we're living in a simulation, Mark, there's certain things we can do within a simulation to counteract what these idiots are doing to us. I try and say, right, this is how I look at it. If you imagine a beehive, imagine a massive beehive, all the little hexagons or pentagons are everywhere, but they're all broken lines. There's broken lines around them, and they're actually atoms. They're actually atoms, and the atoms are not physical. In the middle, you have this, and in the middle, it's not physical. All we have is broken lines of energy around each atom. And we have millions of atoms to make up our body. The trees, everything, all atoms, right? So because we're supposed to be physical, but the physicality is when I do this, the energy and all these atoms are connecting. And that is why it seems physical, but it's actually not physical. And if I'm standing and someone throws a bottle from behind me and hits me on the head, because I didn't know it was coming, it doesn't seem as bad. You're able to, oh shit, you might recover and go, what the fuck was that? But because you're consciously unaware that it's coming, because you're not physical and you're made up of atoms, it doesn't seem so bad. So we have the simulation brought up on the BBC. This morning it was on, and it was a scientist, top scientist. He's talking about a scientist from NASA that have said we're living in a simulation, and it makes more sense than anything else that they have.
Well, I think, there's a certain amount of stuff that's very interesting about that, but I think the reason they're doing it is to kind of spread this idea of the wilderness of the mind. In other words, nothing's real and nothing matters. And that is what you have to be careful of when you get that coming out of the BBC. And I'm going to have a row with you now, Mark. I'm going to have an argument with you now. I don't think that at all, because
What a simulation is to me is that I can go to any other universe. When I die, I leave the body and away.
Yeah, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about their
But other
ability
people,
to.
other people see it different, suppose. But
Well,
I don't care, Mark. I don't care about death.
No, NASA's been doing that for a long time, and what it is, it ties in with social engineering. But what they don't really go into is things like the unified field theory is very, very interesting. And I studied out-of-body experiences for many years, and I did a lot of experimentation with it, and it does work. And yes, I've left my body loads of times, so I know all that stuff exists. That's not the issue. The issue is, why are the BBC jumping on it? Because they are basically trying to dumb people down to be biological robots. So they are part of that. So I see it as two things going on. I see that it could mean that there is no depth to what they're actually saying. Now, if you want to go into this stuff, I've done a lot of shows on it myself about parapsychology and all the stuff we'd covered with Jerry Marzinski, because all that stuff needs to be taken very seriously, because that is a big part of reality. Now, I think that it's the definitions of what that means within the parameters of what they're talking about. Because when they're talking about a simulation, what do they mean? So they mean that you're going to get ready to be basically conned by
microchip
them. Yeah, I mean, this stuff is a lot deeper than they put it out, I think.
Yeah.
That's my view on it.
Mark, but it would actually mean that we have certain abilities they have prevented us knowing about, like manifestation, like synchronicity, things that actually happen.
Well, those words again, synchronicity was really a word that came out in the 80s, I think. And it's really coincidence theory and stuff like that, which is very interesting. But there aren't any coincidences at certain levels. But I think that it's dangerous to generalize. That's what I mean by that, is that the simplifying these things to a simulation doesn't make any sense to me, because when you're talking about the physical reality versus other reality, I don't think it's that simple. And the idea of the priest class is that a lot of this stuff is kept from the public. So if the public are being fed something in a simplistic way, then it's for a very good reason, especially if it's coming out of the BBC. Now, this thing about this stimulation and all that it's been put about before. And I think it's just to disempower people personally. I think it's the opposite of what they are trying to present it as, because if you go into this stuff deeply, then you realize that, on one level, a lot of this stuff doesn't matter, but all I have to do is go up a mountain to realize that. It's you see what I mean? So that's what,
it's more complication.
Absolutely.
It's another complication on the minds of the zombies.
Yes.
But I don't see it in any way. All I see is that the same talk show had David Icke on 20 years ago, and they laughed at him. They called him crazy and all that. And now they're saying certain people are coming on and talk about it. So there is an agenda behind it. I agree with that.
Of course.
Never thought it that way, Mark. But in terms of me, I just see it as an opportunity. I don't listen to the BBC. I just heard it from davidicke.com, where I got
Well, David Icke tends to talk about infinite consciousness and these vague things. Well, he's very inspired by New Agers such as Alice Bailey, and his early works, having looked at them again, 70% disinformation. Now, I never thought I would be at the point where I dismiss all that stuff as easily, but I do now, because I've read the original sources of it all. And the point is that you can't simplify these things down to the level of a soundbite. And that's what a lot of these people try and do. I've talked about this a lot, actually, and we're going to be doing some stuff coming up. I've been in touch with people over the last few days, especially about a certain Hindu cult, which is not really Hindu at all, actually. It was to trap rich Westerners. And I was doing some investigation into them years ago. And they sell this idea of science and spirituality. And it's the biggest con on planet Earth, because it's a load of people who are simplifying things into sound bites. And it's usually aimed at Westerners who are rather gullible. And that's the whole thing about it. So when we talk about this stuff, I think we have to separate it and look at what it actually is, because the idea of the wilderness of the mind and New Age global governance is to keep people into this idea that somehow what's happening isn't real. Well, on day-to-day level, it is real. And that is one of the big cons of westernized Hinduism, was that, well, it's all a simulation and everything is as it should be. That's a way of coercing the population into another form of docility so that they don't react against the system. In other words, that's a huge part of the New Age, in that, well, there's going to be this mass awakening. Well, of course, there isn't. There's never going to be a mass awakening, because people's consciousness is, as you can see by looking around you, being directed and controlled quite easily. So there's not the mass awakening, but that's not important, because there's a priest class on the planet who control all this stuff. And you can't say that what they're doing is right or wrong, because some of them believe it's right. And you then have to argue as to what they're doing and say where it's wrong. And I've had these arguments before. But the point is that the public's perception of things is always simplified, and people then generalize into very easy descriptions of things which are rather more profound than they're talking about. And I think the New Age was very guilty of that, because it created a soundbite culture, which went into popular culture. And people talk in terms of things which go into this crossover of quantum physics and science, which all these charlatans like Deepak Chopra repeated endlessly, which actually mean nothing. Conceptually, it's a way of explaining things, but it doesn't go into anything of any depth, and the dangers which await people who don't know what they're doing. And that's my view of it, you see. So I'm trying to take it a bit of a step further than what you were talking about, because I tend to analyze things quite a lot. But I think that this, I mean, I've had these moments of revelation and stuff, and I get it a lot. But that's the reason I do what I do. But you have to bring it down to some kind of way that you can use this stuff practically. And I think a lot of this New Age stuff has become an absolute cop-out, so that people can go infinite consciousness and this, that, and the other without actually really meaning anything. Because you can say that, but yeah, go on.
Your analysis is good, Mark. But that would, for me, that would be for narrow-minded, small-minded sheep that can't see past anything. But for me, everything you said, that wouldn't have been my thoughts on what they're doing.
I thought I'd preface it. Yeah.
And I don't agree with New Age either, Mark. I don't agree with a lot of that New Age, because there's a lot of liars like Charlie Ward that come in and tell lies to people.
Well, he's just a con man. I mean, I can't believe.
Bring on.
Yeah. That's shocking to me, yeah. He's someone you see in a bar stool. I
don't listen to that bullshit.
No, but the point is, this is an important point, because he's trading on this New Age crap, you know. So he's basically a con man who you'd find on a bar stool in Marbella in his flash shirt, talking crap to his mates. And he's latched onto this because he can see how gullible. So the people who have on his show, you have that idiot Simon Parks. You've got these women who are basically like new age victims talking rubbish. And then, of course, you had the great conspiracy comedian of our age, Greg Haller. And of course, these people are they all kind of stick together. So they're narcissists. Now, the point is that they all slap each other's back because they know deep down that they're liars. They know deep down that they're frauds, right? So fraudsters like to stick together, and that's all they do. Yeah. So, but the thing is that every few years they keep doing it, don't they? You know what I mean? Like it's incredible to me. It's incredible. You can give people fact after fact after fact, and they're not interested. But you get these waffling idiots who you wouldn't even take any notice of in a pub, and then they've got millions of viewers on YouTube, and you think, what's going on? You know, it's hilarious.
YouTube loves them. YouTube loves them, and they're like the Myra Handley and Ian Brady. As soon as they join days, they go, look, there's a fucking liar. There's a murdering bastard. Get on there. They've all joined up in their own wee company. And this guy, Sasha Stone, I don't trust him.
He's a fraud. Yeah, he's a fraud. Yeah,
he's a fraud. Sasha Stone's telling everybody this is happening. And I always wondered, what are you doing about it, Sasha? You're talking all the time.
Well, what he's doing is he convenes his imaginary court on the internet. He lets his long flowing hair down, pretends he's a rock star. He's a rich kid who's spoiled, who started off a thing called Humanitad, which was a UN front. What else do you want to know? There isn't anything. It's an empty shell. Nothing there. Waste of time. Got nothing to say. And if there was anything to say, he wouldn't say it because he's after YouTube hits and he wants these adoring middle-aged women looking after him. So what? Big deal. But don't bore us because we've got work to do. That's my point, you know?
Exactly. Exactly, Mark. And I know we talked about it last night, Mark. I had the best I could do on YouTube was 2,500 subscribers, Mark. I wouldn't be as eloquent as you at speaking or whatever, but what I do is tell the fucking truth, and I just say what I see, and that's
that was right.
And people
that's what I like why you were doing it.
They want you to tell them fairy tales.
Yeah. Of course. I mean, that was the whole point, because when I was at that People's Voice TV, my show was shut down all the time because we were getting people in who were telling you what was actually happening. And of course, they don't want that. Nobody wants to hear it. It's if you mix it up with a load of new age crap and hopium and fakery, and then you put in, we're going to have a new global currency where everyone's going to get £1 million each or something. You'll get loads of viewers because that's what the public want to hear. But I'm here to tell you that you're wasting your time. You need to listen to fact. And you need to do your own research. And that's all I've ever said, which is why we have a smaller audience, but I think a better one, because the people who listen to what we're doing, and we have this Discord server, they talk sense in there all day long. And what I find incredible, that's why I like your stuff, because you're just honest. You say what you mean what you say, and we can have a banter, but we can also come up with something. The point is that I'm not here anymore just to talk on the internet. I'm not interested in talking on the internet. I know we're doing that at the moment, but every show, I mean, we're having a bit of a talk tonight, but the point being, the last show I did with Karen was all about backing up what she was saying. And some people misinterpreted that because I was talking a lot. But the reason I was talking a lot, because we'd already agreed to do that. So I was bringing in every single point that was important. And I'd work that show out. So I don't just get up there and talk a load of waffle. You know, tonight we've gone off the subject a bit, but I still think it's important, you know.
Mark, you have a transcript of a lot of your shows, and that's there's a lot of work in that. I just talk, and I just talk from perspective of what I see happening and get it out. But I don't put any work in it like you, Mark, because you're on board with a lot of people, and I just do it out of passion and trying to get the word out. And I woke up Strabane about 5G. I woke up then, they don't want 5G. Everybody doesn't want 5G. So I don't know, that worked. But see this thing, see the pandemic and all, crazy, man. They don't like it. I've given books away. I wrote a new book there and I give it away. And a lot of people are waking up with a book. So it's working. Things are working, Mark. We just need to plug away, and good comes to those who wait.
No, I agree. I mean, the reason I keep doing this is because the people who find it useful find it very useful, and we've got so many people and so much material to put out, so many people to talk to, and material to put out. Like the series I'm going to be doing at the moment about social engineering. We do films. I've got stuff that I really want to put out, and I am very dedicated to this because that was the idea. But I look at the website and I think it's informative. It's the sort of stuff that people need to look at because it will take them on the right path. But most of this other stuff is 70% or 40% misinformation. So it doesn't matter if what did people they tend to do is they turn around and say, oh yeah, but they're telling some of the truth. Well, telling some of the truth's no good. You have to have absolute concrete evidence and facts for everything you say. And if you're bringing in some of these charlatans and people who may be misleading people, then you're working as counterintelligence, which means you're doing the government's job for them. And that's unfortunately the state of most of what's called alternative media. It's full of media prostitutes who are just doing it to get YouTube hits, talking rubbish. An absolute rubbish that's never going to get anyone anywhere. So that, in conclusion, is my thoughts about that. And that's what we'll keep doing. I'll keep putting out stuff which is, in my view, important. That's what you're doing. That's why I like talking to you, because you say what you mean and mean what you say. And that's all there's to it.
Yeah. And Mark, I find it wild. Strange. Matt Hancock was talking the other day, and I mentioned how great the inoculation's going. And when he said that, he said, you can go and find it out on the web. It told them to go and look at the yellow card scheme. Go and look at it, and you'll see a nightmare. But nobody will. Nobody will. And we have, they told us that I'm going to watch my words, the inoculation is 94% effective, right? What's my immune system? 99% effective. Do the math. Why would I take something that's less effective than my immune system? That's simple. That's easy. Why can't people see that, Mark?
Well, because I think that they've become very mollycoddled. They've become very mentally helpless, and they haven't lived under a tyranny. But newsflash, news just in, you're under one now. So it might be time to look into that one, you know.
They can't see it. Yeah. We're in an absolute dictatorship and they can't see it. It is mind blowing. I know people that were in jail, Mark, through the troubles, relatives, and they don't see it. And they were arrested innocently and things like that. I know one of my uncles was innocent, and he knows what fascism and dictatorships are, and they know the whole score, but they can't see this. They can't see this.
No,
and
no,
it's
because
so in your face.
Yeah, well, it's because they don't understand the nature of governance and how people are controlled, because pandemics and, of course, climate change, these are all listed. These are listed things which are going to drive global governance. And how do you drive governance? You get people into accepting what they believe is the common good. And that means that if you're outside that, then you're going to be demonized. And that again is communitarianism. So in other words, everything has to be done and presented as a benefit. Way. Yeah.
Another way of doing it, Mark, is just what I popped up in my email, is get Pope Francis to call for a world governance. That's exactly the words he asked. A world governance, not a world governant. That's so right. What you're telling
global
me
governance
all fucking year. There you go. A world governance. That's what he wants. He's wrote a letter and sent it to the leaders because it's all part of the plan.
Yes. And they were on board with that a long time ago. But all is that I've been doing is going around the country, or, you know, that's what we were doing before COVID, and also putting this stuff up. We did a show 7 years ago called The Big Society, the Big Society Unveiled. And it's all the stuff that I'm still talking about, but obviously it's moved on into different areas. But if you listen to that show, The Big Society Unveiled, we did that 7 years ago. I've got stuff on YouTube from 10 years ago, and we're still talking about communitarianism. But the point is that people, as you say, they want easy distraction, and it doesn't take that many people to actually work this out, because most of these so-called revolutionary movements have only involved a few people, and that's what they're scared of, because it means that if real people got together, there would be a problem. So they push all the fake people together, and they enable the fake people, because then the public are distracted, because they like bread and circuses and they like sweets rather than the main course. And that's the problem. So I think that's probably where I'd want to leave it now. Unless you've got anything else you want to say.
Can I show your listeners the Fury video? Yeah, it's only short.
Yeah, I'll put it on.
Yeah, I'm going to put it on here.
Okay, off here, yeah.
This is, I love to see this stuff, Mark. People, this guy here is a billionaire. This guy is one of the big boys. He's very rich. So whatever he's saying will make people open their eyes, you know. So what do we see?
Listen, I don't know, they're waiting for crowds, aren't they? But we're going to wait a long time for crowds, Andy. Life will never be the same again. Get used to it, people. Get used to the control. Get used to being told what to do. Get used to the big brother. Get used to everything. You know, you'll need a passport next to go and have a crap. You know, and some people, like myself, I'd rather be dead than live like that. I'd rather be dead. If I couldn't have freedom of speech and walk where I wanted and go where I wanted without all these superhuman rules, these AI intelligence rules, making us like robots. We're human beings, we're not robots. We've got a brain, we've got a body. Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, give us that. Let us use it. Let us use it. Because that's all I'm saying on the matter. It's never going to be the same again. Ever. It's going to get worse. Hold on for a white knuckle ride. Because there's more to come, and I said it first.
To follow up on it, John, just to kind of loop back to it, I don't know whether to take that as kind of an answer on it with regards to do you feel it would happen or not this year? Just your thoughts on it, kind of on that.
I'm not bothered if it happens or not, to be honest with you. I'm pissed off with everything, to be honest and truthful with you. You can tell the way this interview's going. You know, I'm a man with a fire burning inside of me to do something I can't do. Because what do you want to do? You've got to be controlled. You've got to do this. You've got to do that. I don't want to go out my front room anymore. I don't socialise with people no more. I don't speak to people because everybody's gone robotic. No one's got any sense anymore. You know, the only sense I can get is off an 80-year-old man. The rest of them are total idiots. Brainwashed fools. That's what I call them. God give you a brain, start using it. You know.
Well, there you go. Guys, go and subscribe to my channel if you can. I just say what I say and mean what I mean, and that's it. So thanks, Mark.
Thanks for that, Ciaran. I was just addressing a few things in the chat there. So that's great. I think we had quite a lively show there, and probably do another one next Friday. There are some other interviews coming up. I'm going to upload them so on the YouTube channel while it's there, but also it'll be on Odyssey. And of course, our shows every Sunday, 9:30 p.m. UK time, windowsontheworld.net. Please subscribe on Spreaker and Odyssey. Don't know how long we're going to be on this YouTube channel. And there's some very good interviews coming up about social engineering, the steering of the 1960s, counterculture, popular culture. And also, we're going to be looking at very fascinating stuff about the hidden history of especially Britain and also the world. So great stuff. Thanks, Ciaran.
Thanks very much, and good luck, folks. All the best.
Yeah, cheers. See you in a bit.